What's up, everybody? CHM Carnivorous here. I hope that you are having a wonderful day and a wonderful week. Now, about a month or month and a half ago, maybe it hasn't been that long, it seems like all the time sort of compresses, I did a couple of videos about what happens if you break your growth tip on your Nepenthes, or if you have to cut it because of root rot. And I told you in that video not to discard that plant and that there is hope. Now, I would like to give you a update on that plant and just show you what I was meaning, what a new growth point looks like, what you can expect from that growth point, and just all in general, what to expect for a life after a plant when the growth tip breaks on your Nepenthes. What's up, everybody? CHM Carnivorous here, and as I talked about in the introduction, today we're going to talk all things growth tips when they break and growth points when they break and what that means. Now, for a new grower, even for seasoned growers, when the growth point breaks, it can be very demoralizing, and it will often feel like, especially if you're newer in the hobby, it will feel like this spells disaster and the end for that plant. But I encouraged you in those videos, and I will continue to encourage you to not discard those plants, and I will show you why today that there's a good reason why you don't want to do that, and not only show you what life after a broken growth point looks like, but what it could end up looking like, and it could in a way benefit you. Now, you never really want to do this, or you never want to do this purposely unless you're taking cuttings and you have a basal. There's a little tip: if you're going to take cuttings for the main vine, make sure there's a basal. Now, the first thing to understand about your growth points breaking is that a Nepenthes is considered a quasi-woody vine, so it will start off very malleable, and the older part of the vine will then become woody. Now, there are little tiny nodes, and let's see if I can find one. They're very hard to tell on younger plants, but if you look at your leaf where the leaf base meets the vine, you'll see an itty-bitty bump. That little bump is a growth node, and so what that is, it's a little storehouse of potential energy for that plant. So in case something happens, like the vine breaks, or the growth tip breaks rather, or the plant gets large enough that it decides to vine out, it will activate one of those growth points. And what will happen then is you will get a new plant out of that. Now, this might look kind of weird for some people, and I want to explain what this looks like in sort of the life cycle of that, and then I'm going to show you one that I've got right here that I'm super excited about. This is actually the first time this has ever happened for me, and I want to show you that. So when the growth point first starts, first off, it will look like just a completely cut off plant, and it will almost even take on a dead look on that end as that sort of starts to scab over. That is a perfectly natural thing for the plant to do. It is trying to close that open wound to ensure that no bacteria or growth gets in there. And so your plant, for all intents and purposes, will look like it is in complete arrested development and nothing is happening. Now, what you'll find if you look carefully, it can be like watching paint dry. You'll start to see those nodes swell a little bit, and then what will happen in about a week, maybe 2 weeks, is the node will actually separate, and you'll get this little tiny internal, almost looks like a little balloon that is blowing up through a hole, and you'll start to see that a little bit. Now, when that happens, that means that you have a growth point that is starting to become active. That isn't always the case that it will go to maturation. I actually have my spatulata by Truncata Giant that has had a basal growth point, an activated node that has been activated for several months and has not gotten past that sort of ballooning out phase, is staying right there. But the mother plant is growing very well, and so the plant is deciding to put all of its nutrients there. So that's always a good thing. Now, when you'll start to see the growth point come out, first it'll look like that balloon, and then it'll get almost like this teardrop shape, and it'll put out its this little tiny hook. It almost looks like a little cartoon character, and that is not a growth or mildew or mold or any other things. That is a great sign. That means that your plant has activated the node, it has put forth the nutrients, and it has decided to go it that way with creating a growth point on that. So what I'm going to show you now, without further ado, is my Alata by Caesar. And so I broke this point off right after I got this plant, and I was super devastated, but it actually ended up being very, very, very cool. All right, so I'm going to try to hold this up, and if you'll see here, it's a little hard to see, but you see this brown part right here? That is the original growth point, and as you can see, it starts to turn sort of woody, right? That's that scabbing over I'm talking about. And it's a little hard to tell because I don't have, the most macro lens, but none of this growth here existed when this tip broke. So when the tip broke, it was simply just these 3 big leaves here, and that was it. And of course, here's the cutting from the original. There's that woody vine I was telling you about. And so what I started noticing, you see where all these are growing out of? They're all growing out between that little base between the leaf and the stem. That is that node that's been activated. And now you see it has got 3 new growth points on it. And there's the main one right there. See? And it will be growing 2 more of those. So this plant will actually be turning into a Caesar bush. And so it'll put out nice big pictures for me. So this worked out very well that this cutting happened to have 3 growth nodes that this plant decided to activate all of them on. Now, it's interesting to note, it's a little hard to see, but when these plants start to open up their new growth point, they'll almost have like a shell over top of them. So you'll first start to see that bubble, and then you'll see a little bit of a little hook, and then it'll have almost like a shell when it's growing. And it's so cool to see because it almost looks like it's a leaf that's covering the new growth tip, and it is protecting that. And what will happen is as that growth tip grows, that leaf will curl back, and that will be your first leaf. And then you'll get your growth tip that comes in there, and that is when the fun really starts. And so that's exactly what has happened here. See this little tiny truncated leaf here? See how tiny that little thing is? That is not because of a sickness. That is not because of mites or anything. That is a natural occurrence. That was the little tiny leaf that provided that shell over top of this new delicate growth point. And so that leaf is going to stretch its legs now, and it's going to reach for these lights and going to do just fine. Now these here will have the same thing. This right here, you see this little tiny bump here? That's that leaf. That's that leaf that was grown over top, protecting that growth tip, and now it is pushed back to reveal this new growth point. So, all very, very exciting news. I feel like I'm about to sneeze. All very exciting news. What that means is that there is always life after a growth tip. Now, let me show you one more thing for a bonus. Now, let's say you didn't break the growth point off, but you got stem rot, all right? And you got stem rot. So the way to get rid of stem rot, unfortunately, is you have to cut down on the stem to the point where you no longer see the black rot. If you would look at a stem, it looks like a hole. Let's say if I'm staring down at it, you cut it, it looks like a hole, and there's another stem inside. That is the main growth point. That's the sort of meat right there. And if you see it black there, you got to keep cutting lower until that looks green. And so what I have here is a very unfortunate looking plant, but to a grower, it is still very much alive, although not exactly going to win any awards. This plant right here got a root rot, and I had to cut it all the way back to basically the base, save this one leaf. But as you can see here, it has got a new growth point. Now, something to point out, let me go ahead and put this on here so I don't break it, is if you break your growth point, it is going to grow back for you a lot faster. Think about if you had anything that was healthy and it just had a incident like that, it is going to grow back stronger because it has all those healthy nutrients to go towards it. Now, if your plant was suffering something severe like a stem rot, it is not only has to make up for the tip that you just cut off, but it also has to heal first, get strong enough to then produce that energy into that growth. So if you do have to do a stem rot, understand you are in for a long journey, but it is a rewarding journey because you will be able to save your plant. I hope that is all you needed to know about this. This essentially would be part 3 of this growth point. By the time I show you this plant again, we should have a nice big bush of this Caesar, and I can't be more excited about that. Whenever you do get cuttings, here's one more tip. Ask the supplier if it's got those nodes on it. And that is the single reason why this plant is the way it is now, as opposed to me having to wait around for a basal node to grow. It already came with growth nodes ready to go that just needed to be activated. So it just took a clumsy owner like myself to break off the tip. It creates 3 nodes now, and now I have a backup plan for that plant. All right, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please like and subscribe and share this content. Again, the purpose of CHM Carnivores is to get the word out and the interest about these plants to as many people as possible, so that way we can help get these into collections and to push these plants further back away from the endangered columns. I hope that you have a wonderful day and a wonderful week, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.